Welcome to Conversations with Women Who Lead, honest conversations about business, leadership, and what really shapes how women lead. I'm Anne-Marie McHenry, business coach, consultant, creator, and a therapist for the past 2 decades. On this podcast, I sit down with women to talk about their businesses and their unique areas of expertise, as well as how their upbringing, background, and the social conditioning they've experienced have shaped the way they lead. We explore what they've had to learn and unlearn along the way. I'll also be sharing my own journey of founding and selling a business and the very real trials, lessons, and reinvention involved in building my next chapter, Rose and Stone. This is a space for thoughtful leadership, honest conversation, and women redefining success on their own terms. I'm so happy you're here. Thanks for joining us on Conversations with Women Who Lead. Today, we'll be speaking with Lisa McJunkin. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist, executive coach, and co-owner and COO of Daydream MD Integrative Health and Wellness. With 2 decades of experience in trauma recovery, couples therapy, integrative mental health, and psychedelic-assisted therapy, she specializes in helping individuals, leaders, and couples break free from limiting patterns, regulate the nervous system, and create lasting transformation. Lisa blends evidence-informed clinical care with Eastern and Western healing traditions, incorporating somatic practices, energy psychology, ketamine-assisted therapy, and conscious leadership development into her work. She is passionate about advancing ethical, sustainable, and innovative models of mental health care while mentoring professionals and guiding clients toward deeper authenticity, resilience, and connection. Thank you, Lisa McJunkin, for joining me on Conversations with Women Who Lead. I'm so happy to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Very exciting to be here. Thank you.
Yes. So I'd love to start with just hearing about what you do. I know you're doing amazing things in the San Diego area with treating people of all kinds of mental health stuff going on, especially through the ketamine-assisted therapy. But I'd love to hear more about your business and what's going on there.
Sure. Yeah. So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist here in California, and then I've specialized in working with complex trauma for about 2 decades now. When I say that, I'm like, oh my God, has it been that long? It has. And that has kind of lended itself into a lot of different avenues. So particularly exploring psychedelic assisted therapies as options, as well as other somatic based therapies, and then integration of more Eastern and Western frameworks to just really help with a more holistic whole person recovery lens. So in addition to co-owning my own private practice, I've also expanded into having a integrative health and wellness clinic here in San Diego called Daydream MD that I run the operations for. And then that lended me into, executives and people that are trying to run companies are also really struggling with a lot of different areas and could really probably leverage a lot of functional medicine and integrative medicine techniques. So it's all kind of come together in one big circle, but it's never a boring day, I will say.
Yeah, it sounds like you got a lot on your plate right now.
Yeah, it feels really full, and it feels full of a lot of things that I specifically asked for. So so it's like, okay, like this, versus being like, oh, I'm overwhelmed or I'm busy. It's like, I asked for all these things to be coming in right now. So that part. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. That's a lot of
Thank
really
you.
beautiful
Thank
things
you.
you're offering the
I
community.
know I've known you a long time, so you've seen me like grow up from like baby therapist into like doing all this, which is very cool.
So you're in your own private practice. You co-own and you're the COO of Daydream MD.
Yes.
And you're offering executive coaching.
Yes, here. And then I also offer retreats for mostly I do self-identified female retreats as well as retreats for providers to just help with they're very nervous system recalibration focused and getting back into the wilderness and just connecting with ourselves and recalibrating and getting out of burnout. So I offer about 2 of those a year. And then I also participate in biofield therapy called Healing Touch and helping that community out here in San Diego with some volunteer work and connecting with Healing Beyond Borders, which is like the parenting org that responds to that. So those are kind of all things that hang out in my wheelhouse these days.
Yeah. Being specialized in trauma and
Mm.
nervous system support and
Yeah.
burnout, I can't help but ask you how you are managing all of those different roles that
Yeah.
you're playing professionally, and I know you have a
Yeah.
personal life as well.
Yeah.
How do you do all of this?
Yeah. I think part of the way I like to think about burnout is like burnout is like two different things, right? So there's like compassion fatigue, which is what happens just in working with people and their nervous systems and being around someone else's energy and hearing their narratives and stuff. And that comes with the course of like the work that you choose to do, depending on how
Mhm,
much human interaction you have. And then burnout to me is where I have not attended to my own energy field and I have then kind of gotten sucked into a bit of a vortex of like I'm just constantly depleted. And so I try to look at it like I'm very much in charge of my own burnout levels, and my own burnout is because I'm not necessarily aware or doing something to help
mhm,
protect my system and re-energize it and recharge it. And compassion fatigue comes with the nature of this, and so there's like that becomes more strategic. Like my schedule needs to look a certain way. I need to have a cap on how many sessions I have a day. I need to be mindful that I can't just like barrel through my workday without eating lunch anymore. Like there's
mhm,
just these things that I wasn't taking care of myself pragmatically. And I would kind of fuel this narrative that this has to happen now, or this, like, it's like the world wouldn't continue to spin. The clinic wouldn't continue to operate if I didn't
mhm,
just push this last
mhm.
20 emails out or something. And it's, the reality is very humbling when you realize like the world still spins and everything
Yeah.
still exists
Mhm,
without some of that. And actually, I function better and I can actually do more if I regather myself. So, those are kind of some of the operational things, I guess, when I think about compassion satisfaction. In terms of burnout, those are more like the introspective practices. So taking like the first 30 minutes of my day to like, as that, like wake up with a cup of coffee and just kind of like, how am I doing? What's going on? Like, okay, like what's my intention for the day? Like, what are we going for attribute wise? So to other people, that might be their spiritual practice or
mhm,
whatnot. And then um, I, I, my mindfulness needs to involve a degree of movement. So as
mhm,
much as I do understand and honor seated practices, a really beautiful practice to have. I'm just at a season of my life where I need to move my body and I only have
mhm,
so much time. And I want to be more connected to my health and things of that nature. So getting back into hot yoga, getting back into those things. I've got to be in the gym lifting weights a couple of days during the week, and I get all types of time to practice my intentions versus like I don't want to vibes.
mhm,
So, but I think like those parts, and the other part was starting to put parameters around like work, definitely in starting a business. And I know you can relate to this, and like having it feel like it's all on you to like make this happen. For
mhm,
the first 3 years, like I really got lost and like not feeling very balanced. And so like nights, weekends, anytime,
mhm,
like my phone was just always in my hand and
mhm,
like I wasn't actually participating in my life more fully and with my family and socially. And so those also became kind of really big pivots over the last couple of years of like, no, like we need to have like, this is your work schedule and work is not your identity. Like you need to
mhm,
have other things going on in your world that you can
mhm,
talk about. So like actually physically reading a book or doing a puzzle or
mhm,
like something that like is not this. Um,
mhm,
yeah, all those I think are a big part of that. And I think that the last biggest part is these are all things I want to do or have
mhm,
interest in. Like I do have the privilege where my job is not dictated to me anymore and I don't have
mhm,
to deliver things that don't make sense.
mhm,
And I get to impact change when it doesn't make sense. And
mhm,
so I actually think a standard 40-hour week gig working for someone else creates more burnout for me than
mhm,
probably being in
mhm,
my own thing because
mhm.
like that is such an important thing for me to feel like I'm thriving.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
really common. I've heard that from business owners and
Hmm.
people who have created their own organization and operations, that the typical
Yeah.
traditional 40-hour a week work week for somebody else
Yeah.
is more stressful and can create more burnout than running their own
Yeah.
business. But that's
It's
not
very
true for
weird to think of
everyone.
it that way. Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
because not
Yeah.
everyone wants to run their own business, and that
No.
like
Yeah.
choosing to work nights and weekends and a full work week is also not ideal for many people.
No, many people.
What do you find with the executives or business owners that you're coaching? I heard you mention that parts of burnout that you think about are the compassion fatigue, which
Mhm.
is just the nature of being in the mental health field. That's a very
Yeah,
common thing that we experience.
absolutely.
And the actual physical burnout piece of being so tied to your work and not making
Mhm.
time for yourself. But for people who aren't in mental health, are you coaching
Yeah.
those folks or do they experience the same thing?
Yeah, I am coaching those folks. If anything, I think more of why they're coming in is the feeling of like I have all these resources, I've hit all these levels of achievement that I want to hit, but this area of my life just does not seem to be getting with the program. And that often is
Mm-hmm.
involving interpersonal relationships, whether it's
Okay.
with their spouse, with their kids, with dating, with whatever. And it's really aggravating because these are typically folks that are, highly self-disciplined or able to
Mm-hmm.
mobilize or able to think out of the box. And like, it's like this area or this couple of areas won't cooperate. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I think there's a large part of getting really used to the world operating the way you want it to operate and
Mm-hmm.
having a really hard time when something is outside that parameter. And how do you create flexibility of thought? And so, despite you being able to be someone that can handle 52 things coming at you and millions of dollars and all
Mm-hmm.
this, we basically also get very fixed in our mindsets of how something needs to go and where that's
Mm-hmm.
at. It, probably some of the most common issues that I'm working on is just a lot of high conflict intensity or even partnership
Mm-hmm.
within the business realm of intensity because those mindsets are so fixed and there
Mm-hmm.
is a real difficulty in how to make renewed agreements that are mutually beneficial,
Mm-hmm.
um, and those parts and challenging some of the ego. Like it's when I'm really focused on how I feel about it, what I want, where I want, and I'm able to just kind of move my agenda forward consciously, it does create an unintentional narcissism. And it gets really hard to not feel like you consume all the energy or attention in the room
Mm-hmm.
with other people. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's interesting. Those dynamics are less about burnout because then they're more about, I thought I would feel better here. I
Mm-hmm.
thought I thought once we got to this place, like we wouldn't have these marital issues. I thought
Mm-hmm.
in that. And so it's usually kind of this reframing of like, let's look at like how your energy shows up in the relationship and how it perpetuates this dynamic
Mm-hmm.
and make decisions in terms of what you want to do with it. So oftentimes it's a lot around can we come to the table and make renewed agreements? I will say one small tangent on here, something that I thought was always really interesting, but I keep finding happens a lot in the folks I work with
Mm-hmm.
is, there are folks that make business agreements every day. And that's like their thing, contracts and stuff and keep it moving and multiple projects at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But with often like with our relationships and especially with like marriages and like spousal partnerships, we don't tend to run our marriages with similar standards of like the business check-ins and like how are we doing and like
Mm-hmm.
do our agreements work? And so we kind of are like, well, we made these agreements a decade or 2 decades ago. Like they should have just organically evolved with us. And like
Mm-hmm.
we would never expect the business to just do that. We have
Right.
monthly, quarterly meetings, like, board meetings, like those type of things. And so
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes for folks, it's bringing a similar skill set that they're already utilizing, but into this arena. And they're
Mm-hmm.
finding more success with that. And their partners are feeling more heard and attended to because they have a seat at the table. So
Mm-hmm.
it's been an interesting way to play with mental health and expansion. And it's really around like full lifestyle integration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's such a good point about the way that you run your business. We don't
Hmm.
typically think about then transferring that to our
Yeah.
relationships. But if you are running your business and your operations are smooth and you have things really dialed in, you have key performance indicators, you have
Yeah.
financial goals, you're tracking your revenue, you're talking with your team about this very
Exactly.
consistently, and you're on top of it. Like those check ins are there
Yeah.
and you know where you're headed in your business. We don't always do that in our relationships at
No.
all. Certainly
Yeah.
not like,
And I think there's this fear like it's going to be really transactional. Like,
mhm,
okay, you do it. And it's like, no, it's like shared agreements, like how we're going to fight. and resolve
Hmm.
conflict. Like,
Yeah.
so if one of us needs a minute, like, great, but then you got to reinitiate the convo within 24 hours. Like,
Hmm.
that's a shared agreement between us.
Right.
And that's like, it's like a business operating agreement, right? It's like
Yeah.
in that, but it's funny because it's just like, it's not rocket science. It's
Right.
very like, these are things that we do all day long in this one arena, but we just don't translate it here.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of times we get home and we're tired and we don't want to have to think
Yeah,
about it.
exactly.
Like then you kind of hope that your relationship goes on autopilot and everything's
Hmm.
fine. And there's that element of like, if you're not clear and you don't have clear expectations, like how is your partner supposed to know what's important to you or what you want?
Yeah.
But you just are too tired or you just assume that
Yeah.
it's fine, right? Or they'll figure it out.
Yeah. That is a big part is like humans generally to feel attached and thriving in an interpersonal relationship cannot be put on hold for 1 to 3 years while your business does not well, doesn't become a startup anymore. Like
Right.
you don't have the same degree of grace that you might have in other business areas because it is personal, it's emotional,
Hmm.
it's like those
Hmm.
parts.
Hmm.
And I'm always a little bemused how much that is like so like what like why it's like because it's like this is where it's not just cerebral like there's an emotion there's attachment attached to
Right.
it in that. And I think that's the hard part is entrepreneurs. I also work a lot with like special operation forces and stuff like that, and there's just kind of this general acceptance that like divorce rates are really high and relationships
Hmm.
don't work, or if you're going to choose this, like you're usually going to take a hit here.
Hmm.
And I think that's kind of become a bit of the expectation platter is like very few will make it out still married, very few. And it's
Wow.
sad. It's kind of like the same
Hmm.
idea where like PTSD is something you just always have to manage and it
Hmm.
can't be actually recovered. And it's like,
Hmm.
well, this is just stuff we've grown
Hmm.
accustomed to hearing or believing, but not necessarily
Hmm.
is that where we should land.
Yeah,
So
it doesn't have to be true.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting too about the executives or business owners that you're working with, that they are struggling in their personal lives because
Hmm.
we can't control other people, right? We're so used
Yeah.
to like creating this business and the
Mhm.
operations and workflows and managing our team because we're the
Yeah.
ones in charge. But in your personal life, when you can't do that, I can see how that would be so frustrating and
Yeah.
also like
Super
such a hit to your
frustrating.
ego of like, why can't I get this right? But
Hmm.
we forget that we're in relationship and that emotional part that you're talking about. It's not just cerebral. Like we're doing this with
Yeah.
another human or with other humans socially that we aren't in charge of.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think the frustration here's like the beauty, like, light and dark with everything, but like
Mhm.
the light and dark of both sides of like the double-edged sword of being an exec also means that like you tend to have like thicker skin and you tend to
Mhm.
kind of like you don't stay in a place of self-loathing or like why like for very long. It just is going to flip into judgment. And so it might
Mhm.
start out as I'm frustrated and then very quickly it's going to move into I'm frustrated and you need to get your shit together like to your partner like and now it's like well this isn't my problem, this is your problem, but your problem's becoming my problem and
Uh-huh.
I'm going to do this, and then
Yeah.
it goes into like decrees of like well this is what we're going to do,
Yeah.
and like if you just listen to me we'd be fine, like
Oh my
and
gosh.
again going back into that. But I do find like that's like the second layer is the first layer is like frustration that like I just can't make this work the way, and then the second one is like all the judgment that then becomes resentment in
Yeah.
the relationship sector frequently because it's like well I don't just sit in frustration, I do something about it. It's like
Right.
okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I've
Good.
said this myself and I know other business owners like
Hmm.
action is not a problem for me. I
No.
can take
Yeah.
action. Like it's the waiting and oftentimes feeling and sitting with the discomfort that is hard.
Yeah.
But I think that action gets trained into you as long as you're running a business and you want it to be successful. I don't know how you
Yeah.
don't like there is a lot of action required in starting
Yeah.
something and maintaining it. Hopefully it gets less and less over time, but that just like action's not the
Yeah.
problem if you're running a business. You know how
No. I almost think it's like the other side is like that becomes like the sole contract of the entrepreneur is to learn how to do the inaction part or the
mm,
flexibility to like give time. Like
mhm,
that's probably one of my biggest learnings of is like taking action is not a problem, but like you see, like you can flip your business, and when you're, especially when you're a startup, it's like you feel like you have to constantly come back to the table and churn the next thing. You only have so much revenue, you only have so much time. Like this has to
Mm-hmm.
move. You have to start hitting different markers. Okay, we didn't think of this. Let's add this in. So you get really used to just constantly actionably pivoting
Yep.
monthly to definitely within a quarter, you've had multiple pivots and then depending on like how many times you've done this coming to the table to make a business or how passionate you are about the business or how child, like some of my folks have this like really well dialed in, like, but they're kind of like churning and burning and like
Mm-hmm.
what they're doing and like same ideology and same people or they're,
Mm-hmm.
silent partners. When it's your project, and then it's like so much is on the line. There's like all these parts showing up to like make this happen. So
Mm-hmm.
I do think like that being one of the bigger, harder lessons for almost anyone in the entrepreneur sector is like this balance between actionable and then releasing, which is the same issue as to why like I can be super productive at work and then it's almost hard for me to like put my phone down at night and not pick it
Mm-hmm.
back up again because
Mm-hmm.
it's like you just get in a go mode. And like, how do you readjust your go mode and still see that as like very necessary and not
Mm-hmm.
just, well, my family needs this, or if I don't do this, my husband's going to bitch at me. Like, like I
Yeah.
better, it's like I need to see value in it. But I also now, years later of running these businesses, can see like where like me not taking action right away in certain things was
Mm-hmm.
like I just avoided a shit ton of struggle,
Mm-hmm.
and so I will say like that I think just comes with the territory of learning how to do this and maneuvering your own energy and realizing
Mm-hmm.
like almost for the most part anything I want to take such impulsive action on in my business is usually something I need to sleep on. And anytime I move that quickly, it's just going to create like ramifications that would take way longer than if I
Mm-hmm.
just sat with it for a minute and like basically calm down, and like what's the wisest course to do here.
So let me just recap in my brain. You were talking about action and
Mhm.
some like just waiting and not acting with that urgency or impulsivity that saved you a lot
Mhm.
of struggle down the
Yeah,
road. And I think that
absolutely.
that's such an important point because going through your life and your business as if you're putting out fires, which is so possible to do. Like there's always
Yeah.
something to deal with. I can tell you're typing right now and dealing with something.
Sorry. Edit that part out.
I see you.
Damn it. I haven't learned the art of that. My eye deflection going up.
No, but there's always something that you can tend to. And I hear you like
Right.
it's fine. The not acting out of impulse actually can save
Yeah.
a lot more trouble down the road than if you just pause and like let things settle and then see what happens for a minute. Like sometimes I remind myself like, is this decision or thing right now going to matter in 5 years? And that has helped me in a
Exactly.
lot of those moments.
Yeah. That's that's a great reframe to just help pull it out of the intensity of the moment. It's like
Yeah.
this quick snapshot out. I will say too, like it also like depending on the energy of your other business owners, like, I there's I've gotten energetic where someone is like slower to move and like I kind of need
Mm-hmm.
to pace it. And then in my other business, the other person moves really quickly and I'm kind of need to be more the slower pacer. And so being very cognizant of
Mm-hmm.
that energetic in those roles is also a whole other layer in the mix when you have more than just you in the
Mm-hmm.
business.
For sure. Yes. And
Yeah.
that's something I've talked with business owners about that running
Hmm.
a business by yourself as a sole owner is much different than when you have a partner.
Yeah.
And when you have a partner, I mean, there's light and dark. It's like super helpful to have another person to run decisions by and to lean on.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to run everything by them and lean on them.
Yeah,
When you're on your
exactly.
own.
Right. All your control issues are going to get very pinged for
Yes.
sure. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, Quickly, a question about your coaching. Are you
Yeah.
coaching as a coach or are you using your therapist license when you're working with business owners and talking about their relationships? How does that work?
Yeah. I am just considering myself in a hybrid realm. So because
Okay.
it's in my scope of practice to do complex trauma recovery and to do diagnostic rounds and stuff of of that nature, um, I feel comfortable just staying in the coaching realm and being able to talk about these areas and
Mm-hmm.
these sectors. Uh, Traditionally, the conversation then becomes like if someone has other secondary needs in which like the diagnostics are
Mm-hmm.
needed and labeled and stuff like that, then those sessions need to be very clearly identified within the therapy sector just to make sure I'm within compliance and all of those. But
Mm-hmm.
um, how I run my sessions and what this looks like looks incredibly similar, whether it's just part of my style. I've always been a lot more directive. I've always been a
Mm-hmm.
lot more, um, probably like more casual linguistically, like as evident by this podcast and my cursing, and what that looks like. But like the way coaching feels and works and the adaptations of like really just meeting the person where they are at now and then working kind of backwards when needed, that
Mm-hmm.
has always been more my therapeutic style. So I
Mm-hmm.
think I've always been doing coaching and been trying to format it into therapy and stay with all the compliance needed for therapy, and then realized like I I much prefer the coaching format
Mm-hmm.
and how that works. So yeah, so I primarily identify as an executive coach,
Mm-hmm.
and that, I it's within my scope to be able to talk about these things and connect. And if it makes sense to formalize it into a therapy relationship, then that can be a conversation had.
Mm-hmm. Great. Amazing.
Yeah.
Tell me more about Daydream and what you and your colleagues are doing there.
Yeah. So Daydream started out as primarily a ketamine clinic, and Dr. Azam and then Sam Schultz, who's now an NP, both started Daydream for about a year before I joined, and they were
Mm-hmm.
both working the emergency room system here in San Diego, and were just kind of just frustrated by the amount of really severe mental health that was showing up and occupying like medical based like areas of the hospital for long periods of time and causing a lot of other issues as well as like not being appropriately treated. And so
Mm-hmm.
ketamine therapy has been around for a very long time as both an anesthetic and analgesic. It doesn't cause cardiac depression, so it was used a lot. And pretty much anyone who's had any type of anesthesia and any type of surgical procedure is also administered ketamine because of the fact it plays well with other medications. It's easier on
Mm-hmm.
the body. Haphazardly, they started to find that like folks were actually coming out of anesthesia using ketamine were reporting elevated mood levels post
Mm-hmm.
surgical procedures upon their like post op recovery. And they started to say, like, well, let's take a look at it and see what's going on here. And then found out like maybe there's something to this. So about 15 years ago, give or take, ketamine therapy started to become looked at as potentially a integrative or an adjunct modality for psychiatry to really help with complex or what they were calling treatment resistant depression.
Mm-hmm.
That then it kind of expanded to PTSD, OCD, various other presentations that were considered like difficult to treat or not showing the levels of where we thought it should be at that certain time. So those are all arenas I think that we have seen um, ketamine assisted therapy grow. I will say, in working with Daydream, I always had a vision of us having a more integrative health and wellness center. That's always been
Mm-hmm.
my thing. I think you heard me talk about that years ago. I've tried a couple
Mm-hmm.
different iterations. California, there's a lot of medical billing laws and stuff of that nature. And so really needing to pair with someone with a medical license is kind of imperative to get that
Mm-hmm.
off the ground. And then there was a lot of learning. Our son comes, Dr. Azam, is our son, he comes from, a medical background. And so he's
Mm-hmm.
looking at like how the body is going to metabolize this and where that's at. And then me coming from a mental health background, I'm more concerned about like, what is their nervous system regulation ability to actually handle what's being brought up.
Mm-hmm.
And so really learning how to create a hybrid space where both of those are being attended to at the same time or recognized as being important.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been a really cool and very fun learning curve of doing that. So we have ketamine assisted therapy, we have traditional psychiatry, there's more traditional and trauma recovery therapy services. I
Mhm.
run the executive coaching line, and then Dr. Azam has really dived into functional medicine and really us building a vitality program here. And so, really focused on what, in my opinion, should be primary care based things of preventative care of like, where's your
Mhm.
metabolic health actually at?
Mhm.
What are your life goals? Like, where's your
Mhm.
mobility? Where are those things? And so, just realizing, especially with women's health, it is just so far beyond the curve, but even just
Mhm.
general health in general, it's like the focus has been on the lifespan and the lifespan has increased, but the health
Mhm.
span, which is how well we are living and how mobile
Mhm.
you are and all that, our health span is actually declining. So we're living longer to not necessarily live the lives we want to be living at that
Mhm.
point. And
Mhm.
so wanting to now really focus a lot of efforts and energy and resources and helping people understand like here's what you need to know, and then you can make decisions what you want to do with your health and how you want to advocate. So
Mhm.
being able to understand what a full metabolic lab panel does and a DEXA
Mhm.
scan and why you need to have those if you're considering a GLP-1, and like
Mhm.
really understanding what is going on here versus relying on our providers to tell us,
Mhm.
okay, you're fine, I'll see you in a year,
Mhm.
and that type of thing. So it's all been really cool and very interesting, but it's nice to really be a part of a hub where we're not just like sharing offices next to each other. It's like actually working together,
Mhm.
and coming up with really collaborative plans. So especially for my crew of execs, they really appreciate the fact that like, if there are some trauma imprints that are needing some rescripting or wiring, they might be able to access some ketamine assisted therapy sessions to really help move some of this neural network reformulation quicker,
Mhm.
and calm down the fear center. Or, you know, some of other folks, it's like, especially a lot of my female entrepreneurs have been in like hormone depletion for a
Mhm.
really long time. And it's
Yep.
like, that's not discussed enough in terms
Mhm.
of like how much that really impacts sleep and all these other things. And so, being able to see it more as a full integrative picture versus like, okay, now here's a referral, go here, and here's a referral,
Mhm.
go here,
Yeah.
has been really one of the main visions that we've had for Daydream. And it's
Mhm.
slowly making its way there.
Yeah, that's so awesome to have so many resources under the same roof and that your
Yeah.
providers, I'm guessing, are all educated in what everyone else does and can
Yeah.
look at the full patient or client profile.
Yeah.
And each client has access to each different type of provider or service. That just sounds amazing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been, it's been fun. And it's also been like, oh man, I don't know if we can pull this off. Like this is a lot of things, right? Like every new service line is its own business, basically. And so
Hmm.
you're like, okay, like how do we do this and do it to the standard that
Yeah.
we have held the other service lines to? So
Yeah.
it's been fun. Yeah.
So, do you mind if I ask you more about the
Yeah.
infrastructure of your business and your leadership?
Of course. Yeah.
So, are you co owning Daydream with two men?
I co-own with Dr. Azam, and then we have like a profit share arrangement, basically. And so because I joined a practice where the two of them were making business decisions, we kind of
Hmm.
have an owner's table essentially. And
Okay.
so how it's technically on paper set up as two owners of the business, and then there's some profit share there. How we want to operate is acknowledging the folks that were here from the get-go, and
Hmm.
everyone kind of gets a seat at the table.
Yeah. And so you're an owner of the business or you're
Yes,
collecting
I'm the
profit share?
co-owner.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
And then so your co-owner was Dr. Azam?
yes, and that's also like California to own a medical corp, like
Hmm.
like um, the holder of the medical license has to own 51% of the company.
Okay. Yeah.
And then to have a non-medical owner like myself, that works for like, it's like a 1-to-1 ratio, basically.
Hmm.
And so, like, in order to bring on another non-MD, you would
Hmm.
have to also bring on an MD. So
Okay.
that is why we did the profit sharing piece is we had two non-MDs and one MD, and we didn't want to bring on another doc to just
Got it.
basically collect ownership profit off of it, but we didn't
Right.
have a need for it.
Right. Right. That's so complicated. Feels
It does. This
unnecessary.
is
But
like where it gets into like the weird like weeds that you're just like, all right,
yeah,
like
you're like, fine.
it is what it
This
is.
is the
Yeah.
we're in. Yeah. So how has it been for you to be a female in leadership making
Hmm.
decisions with a male or two male counterparts?
Yeah. I mean, my personality really loves making decisions and like having a seat at the table. So that
Mm-hmm.
part, like in terms of like, I don't think I've had difficulty finding my voice, that type of stuff. My
Mm-hmm.
partners would probably say like, building temperance and like this whole like taking it down a notch and like being really clear what's important here and staying focused and not like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, like you were throwing off my agenda today, like like
Uh-huh.
those vibes. Those have been more the learnings I think I've had. It's interesting, especially coming from a psych background. Our
Mm-hmm.
field is very female dominated,
Mm-hmm.
but the exec suites are very male dominated. And so traditionally, you don't normally see a lot of women at the table in
Mm-hmm.
clinic-based practices and stuff like that in terms of ownership.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the folks that I needed to consult with or connect with or like, that I need to network with, it's predominantly masculine based
Mm-hmm.
here in San Diego, at least. So,
Mm-hmm.
and for a chunk of California, actually, like that I
Mm-hmm.
have witnessed and been networking out here. And so that, and especially when we're talking ketamine assisted therapy and getting into psychedelics, now you're getting into
Mm-hmm.
more of a mainstream majorative population. So a lot more like Caucasian based, a lot more male based. Like these are, there
Mm-hmm.
are definitely some female presence in there, but it's very slow. And, there are more studies done on women rats than actual women utilizing these medicines. I mean, so it's like, it does feel like we're very behind the table. I will say I haven't seen another ketamine clinic that is owned by two BIPOC members of the
Mm-hmm.
community. Like that was kind of a big thing,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like, okay, like, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not until you get in these rooms where you start to realize how odd
Yeah.
that is,
Yeah.
and what that looks like.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think from a female standpoint, I think, and in talking with other women execs and stuff as well, I think the part is like the expectation that like we're going to emotionally contain and handle the room really well, and we're going to be this like maternal edge, but we're also going to be like the really organizational factor and keep us on
Mm-hmm.
track and doing all these things. And so, I think sometimes some of the frustration comes in often of like, why do you think I know how to do this more than you know how to do this versus like I'm just figuring it out and like,
Mm-hmm.
in this part and like that whole like feeling like, okay, the buck just gets flipped over to like the person that's more organized or the buck like versus like,
Mm-hmm.
no, this is like sit with it a second and research it and decide what, and then ask me about it. But like, let's not just assume like this is going to happen now because you've said this in a meeting, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
something. And so I think that part of like, and that's also on me is like, I have traditionally been someone who's like, okay, like, let's take it, let's run with it. I'll figure
Mm-hmm.
it out.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of it is in how I set up these partnerships is like, I'm the person that's going to get shit done and I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
make a 12-point plan and I'm going to execute and I'm pretty good
Mm-hmm.
at being like self-governed. And that recognition of like, I don't need to put my hand in every pot and every idea is not an idea I need to be involved in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that part. And then that also means like the execution of some of these ideas, like I'm not necessarily going to love and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. And
Mm-hmm.
I can't have it both ways, essentially, and what that looks like. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's been a harder curve. That I don't know if that's particular to being a woman or that's just me, but I do know there's
Mm-hmm.
often this kind of sense of like overconfidence because the multitasking is not
Mm-hmm.
hard to do, or the planning or the seeing the details is
Mm-hmm.
not hard. But there does seem to be across the board and in many businesses I've done before, but also just in the two that I'm in now that I have male counterparts as my
Mm-hmm.
partners and like that stuff just kind of slides over to this.
Mm-hmm.
And again, my gig is ops. So like
Yeah. You're supposed to get stuff done.
I'm supposed to get stuff done. So yeah, I think like that part's always an interesting part that I'm still trying to figure out.
Yeah. I, this just came to me. I'm making this up, but tell me if this is
Mhm.
what you're saying. It sounds
Yeah.
like you're like the default parent or the default partner in these
Yeah.
relationships.
Like the responsible partner. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like if
like,
they're not
okay.
going to do it, then of course Lisa will.
Yeah. Like, here we go. Like, it'll get figured out somehow. Like, so,
Yeah.
it's
And by
like,
it'll get figured out, Lisa will figure it out.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Would you say that overfunctioning is something that you have
Mm,
seen come up for you and that shows up in these businesses?
absolutely. Yeah. And then I think, and similar, it's like the resentment for overfunctioning that comes up too. So I definitely
Mm-hmm.
had like these very big waves of like, where then you just get kind of resentful or you get like in your head about it and how it's never fair and what's the point and da da
Mm-hmm.
da. And
Mm-hmm.
should I still do this anymore? Maybe I shouldn't. And, my
Mm-hmm.
default is like, I'm just going to make salsa at the farmer's market. And it's like, but
Yeah.
like, I don't even make that good of salsa. So I don't even know why this is my default. But it's like, I should have why did I make my life more difficult? Or I'll go back to like, maybe I should just go back to my hospital gig and like, you just clocked in, clocked out, and like,
Yeah.
da da da, and
Mm-hmm.
just that part of like, like I've made things more difficult for
Mm-hmm.
myself and I've set this up and I don't necessarily want to clean it up. I just don't want to participate anymore. So those are
Right.
definitely
Yeah.
phases that I've gone through. I think that's just like a phase of learning how to be the entrepreneur you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Is like that's part of your growing edge is you got to learn how to
Mm-hmm.
manage these
Mm-hmm.
places. But that it's a very I'm happy to report that they are less frequent and less intense than they used to
Mm-hmm.
be. So
Yeah.
might be
Well,
more days now instead of weeks.
yeah, yeah. And I think to come back full circle to where we started is that not everything that you need to attend to is urgent or a crisis.
Hmm.
You can wait, you can not respond immediately. A lot of times things get sorted out or they don't need to be handled or somebody else
Yeah.
picks it up. So that pause and that mindfulness, if you will, around it, I think
Right.
it's a skill, right? It just needs to be practiced
It is.
over and over
Yeah.
and over again. Yeah.
Just a few
Um,
times.
yeah. For our listeners who don't know what overfunctioning is, because I
Mm.
remind myself, not everyone knows that language. How would you define that?
Yeah. It's constantly doing more because you can. And
Mm-hmm.
in is how I look at it. Like because I'm capable or because this is my skill set or because this lands in my job detail. But
Mm-hmm.
it's the overdoing, or sometimes it is also like, it can also move into like a perfectionist lens of like doing more than what's needed because it's like representative of you and your
Mm-hmm.
work and all that type of stuff. So it's typically in the land of an overexertion or overdoing of something
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't actually merit or meet the need of
Mm-hmm.
what's happening here. And
Mm-hmm.
it feels very personal
Mm-hmm.
when it's not received well or being criticized or someone wants to give
Mm-hmm.
you feedback on it. You're typically an overdoing when it lands really personally,
Mm-hmm.
either in like, I'm the only one doing this and no one else is doing this, or like, how dare you have any opinion on it? You haven't given an ounce of effort into it. Like
Yeah.
those are usually good indicators you're in the overdoing sector.
That's such a good point. And also, the way you're describing it sounds like, we start to identify or we adopt an identity of being the one who's capable and being the one who
Yeah.
can or is supposed to do it all. And then when somebody
Hmm.
criticizes that, I mean, that's such a good marker
Yeah.
to notice. If I feel judged and criticized by someone telling me I'm doing too much, I've started to identify as that person, and
Yeah.
that's just not necessary. Like
Yeah.
that
And
awareness.
I will say too, like, it's not always someone even noticing you're doing too much. Like, that becomes the whole point of contention. Like, no one's noticing how much I'm
Yeah.
doing. And then the other part is like, if anyone has an opinion on it. So it's like,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
just did this beautiful project and I have all these
Mhm.
things. And like, my partners are supposed to poke holes and shit to like ensure that like we're thinking of everything. But there's
Right.
like, I'm not showing up to the meeting with any invitation of any feedback, nor did
Yeah.
I give them any disclaimer. I don't want any feedback.
Right.
So it's like, they're just looking at me like, I don't know what's going on here, but she's really like, something's happening. Right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
like, those are usually good signs to me of like, I've overdone, overextended,
Mhm.
over analyzed
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And it didn't need all this.
Right. So then take me the next step to where nervous
Hmm.
system support or nervous system regulation comes
Yeah.
in.
So this is really, I think ultimately for anyone I work with, it's about finding like, how do you organically like just connect, release, like discharge energy that does not work in your body. Like, where do you go? Who do you go? What do you listen to? What do you physically do? That just helps you just breathe out, like
Mhm.
full open mouth exhales to tell your nervous system to stop holding. And like
Mhm.
organically, the breath is probably the easiest way to start because organically we just hold our breath the more anxious we are. And then we start breathing out of less and less capacity in our lung space. And so, how you know how tightly bound your nervous system is or how survival mode is
Mhm.
pretty indicative of like take an exhale naturally and see how far it lands. And so, this practice of taking some actual full conscious open mouth exhales neurologically signals to your body there is no impending threat in this minute, stand down. And it tells
Mhm.
it to start downshifting. So, what are practices or things that allow you to do that? Whether that's
Mhm.
contrast therapy, like cold plunges and saunas, whether that's hot yoga, whether that's going for a walk with your dogs, whether that's sitting still, whether
Mhm.
that's being on one of those vibration machines that like just
Mhm.
shakes you for 5 minutes. Like, we can do and driving home but turning off your radio in your car and using your time as you drive home to transition from work
Mhm.
to home consciously. While it's doing that, it's also curating single point of focus, which is
Mhm.
like the antithesis of anything in mindfulness is about curating a single point of focus so you get out of the future or the past and you just come into the present. And
Mhm.
so those two things, while sounds very simplistic, integrating what those practices are for you in your
Mhm.
actual urban lifestyle, that's where the challenge is. So it's
Mhm.
like, what is it for you? And there's millions to pick from, and there's millions of apps, and there's millions of books, and there's millions
Mhm.
of steps. But what actually integrates into your lifestyle? So, for example, if I'm pissed off, like anything in stillness is not going to work. I'm just going to sit there and contemplate how pissed off I am. So
Mhm.
I really need to like be moving my body more vigorously in that. So
Mhm.
that's where like moving to a hot yoga class, moving to like some type of like walk run attempt, like moving to like something with weights, like something where you are physically feeling that like right? And I have
Mhm.
something to move it out of, moves that fire out of your belly. If you are someone that's really depleted and you just need to bring energy in, then
Mhm.
that might be like sitting under a tree and like taking a breath for a minute, reading a part of like a passage in like a favorite book for a second for inspiration, like things that are curating or slowing down or helping you to just remember how
Mhm.
to connect. So, I think it's not a 1-2. It's like nervous system regulation is about getting out of survival and into thriving. In order to thrive, there's like, I use my breath, right, to do
Mhm.
that essentially. And so the breath is free. As long as we're alive, we have access to it. You can do breath work anywhere, and it does not need to look like certain structured breath work that can help dive into things, but simply just remember like 3 deep exhales, conscious exhales a day will pivot how intense energy feels in your body in that moment.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think that those parts, but even like, if my schedule is just back to back, back all the time, like I'm not necessarily breathing between meetings. I'm just trying to
Mhm.
participate and do
Mhm.
this.
Yeah, that's such a great tip. Just 3 deep exhales a day.
Yeah.
Because I think any time that someone reminds you to breathe, it's like, oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
totally wasn't breathing fully. So just
Right.
right
Yeah.
now, even hearing you say that, I'm like, oh yeah,
I'm
okay,
like,
okay, Emery. But 3 a
yeah.
day
And then,
is easy. That's great. Like,
yeah.
if that's what the goal is, that feels
Yeah.
very doable.
And
Even
then the
1,
goal is
right?
to get into like a proactive reactive stance. Like at the beginning of your day, can you take 3 consciously, proactively just to like get your body used to feeling what it feels like to feel really regulated? And then it
Mhm.
becomes more noticeable when you're not there. And
Mhm.
then reactive is you do the same exhales, but when I need them throughout the day.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. And then maybe you do it again before bed proactively to just recognize like the wins of the day, like what worked today.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like these are practices that don't require money, they don't require a chunk of time. They do require a commitment to being more conscious.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, the
Yeah.
proactive and reactive breaths.
Hmm.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Can you also define the nervous system in, like, kindergarten terms?
Sure.
Because actually I was talking
Yeah.
with another executive a few days ago about
Hmm.
nervous system support, and she said, "What is a nervous system? What does that actually
Yeah.
mean, Marie?" I was just talking about it, and
Yeah.
she wait, I don't. So how would you define it?
Yeah. So let me do my best on this. And my poor co-owner, who's a doctor, is going to be like, "Oh my God, she said what?" Sorry, Arslan. So nervous system essentially is like kind of like a central computer system of like your whole
Mm-hmm.
body. It's your central mainframe. It's receiving stimuli from every organ, every muscle, every part of your body. And it's just constantly conveying and relaying information up and down. And then ultimately, it's a framework of nerves that then connect all the way up from the tips of your toes through your spine, latent across your spinal column, and then all the way up into your brain and then into your neocortex, which is the higher order of functioning of our brain. And so it's essentially your main constant internal communication line of how your internal environment is doing at all times. And then it has, based on evolution, it has developed a lot of reactionary patterns to anything it perceives as being a threat. So the nervous system and part of our like most primitive brain is primarily concerned with survival. It doesn't care
Mm-hmm.
about your quality of life. It doesn't care if you want to be a conscious parent. It doesn't care about love and light. It just wants you to keep moving forward and wake up tomorrow. And like,
Mm-hmm.
that's it. And
Mm-hmm.
avoid being attacked and these type of things. And so there's literally parts of our brain that just scan for shit to be scared of all day long. And then there's another layer of the brain where these neurons are wrapped into, which is your emotional layer and your connective to like other people and the attachment and these lines of like feeling cared for and attended to and a sense of purpose. And then you've got higher order reasoning, which is now like, okay, like what am I doing in this lifetime and what does it mean and why are we humans and like what is the purpose of life? So all of these things from like really just basic survival and information highways all the way to like higher order meaning is all attached to this huge neural network that's constantly just kind of like a breathing, living thing that's receiving information and sending it. So the hard part is if I get narratives in my brain lodged of like, I'm defective somewhere or I can't pull something off, like that, I have wiring that's constantly receiving and bringing information back that's either validating that and usually not challenging it unless I have some coaching to learn how to challenge those things.
Mm-hmm.
So the information network is picks up actual information and then it also feeds off of the information I have stored.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's the
And
nervous system.
right. And the information we're picking up is basically us scanning for threat and danger. And so we're
Yeah,
looking for that. And then if we've already experienced a difficult situation or we just believe bad things will happen, those are the networks that are stored already. And so we're going to be finding more
exactly.
evidence
Right.
of why we should be scared. And so then we're constantly in this state, this like
Yeah.
activated, anxious, nervous, fight or flight state.
Yeah. And the best way that I think lands with most folks is thinking about it. It's like, how do you explain how, like, if 100 people went through the same traumatic event, why is it that 5 to maybe 20% will develop lasting PTSD? But
Mm-hmm.
everyone went through the event itself. And that the reality is it's not the event itself
Mm-hmm.
that is particular, it is details, it is information, but that is not the holder of the trauma energy. The trauma
Mm-hmm.
energy is actually held within how do I perceive what it means that this event happened.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if this was around like something to do with a car accident, if I don't have any predisposition to car accidents and I have one and it's intense, I will likely have a similar nervous system response. We all will have something that mirrors something that feels like PTSD: hypervigilance, high startle response, agitation, sleep disruption, intrusive thoughts, those type of stuff. Traditionally, over about 30 days, other parts of my brain kick in because this has not been my history and my narrative where it's like, Lisa, you've been driving for a really long time. This was a one
Mm-hmm.
off. The chances of this happening, it is still safer to drive than fly. I mean, like, I will just
Mm-hmm.
kind of, the narrative will kind of span back out to what I know. It's being
Mm-hmm.
cross checked with these other areas. And then, depending on how much resource I have in terms of people and access to things to help rebridge my sense of safety, I will end up typically having more skills at the end of that traumatic event than I had before because now my vigilance and connection to things is in a different place and I've adapted new neural networks.
Mm-hmm.
So that is that's the crew that doesn't, even after really horrific traumatic things, does not develop a degree of PTSD, is because they have these, what is considered like resiliency
Mm-hmm.
factors in there. For folks that generally are developing it, what you find is they've had a history where a theme related to this has come up. So again, if it's around the car accident idea, then it's like this part of like, well, I've been in this before and people are always unsafe and no one is driving right and road rage and all
Mm-hmm.
these articles and all these things. And all my narrative is that the world is unsafe and people are unsafe and I can't trust
Mm-hmm.
myself or others. And that just got reinforced here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I still have the same kind of 30-day experience, but instead of it feeling more relief, it usually feels like it's doubled down. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I've proven this to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this is very, very helpful to think about the nervous system. Is it's really a lot of the nervous system work is regulating this neural network and information network, but ultimately the bigger picture is going after the perspective that I land on, because that's what's either getting reinforced or challenged and
Mm-hmm.
expanded.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the majority of coaching and anything when you're doing nervous system regulation work is, one is to help the body learn how to recognize information and how you can consciously reprogram and
Mm-hmm.
release what you don't need and how you can bring in what you need. But first, like, I need to be conscious that it's a whole system. So there's a whole
Mm-hmm.
somatics to it. The other piece, though, that needs to be attended to at the same time is, what is the perceptions and stories and narratives that I have about this
Mm-hmm.
in general? And then when you pair the two together, it allows you to have more of this integrative ideology of like, okay, this feels really true for me. This makes sense. This is where I
Mm-hmm.
landed on this. And I think that's why a lot of, unfortunately, traditional Western therapies for trauma do not work alone, because they only go after the perspective or the emotions and they don't actually attend to the body.
Mm-hmm.
And likewise, thematics without attending to the brain or the
Mm-hmm.
emotions, they're going to fall short. You kind of really need all three for that
Mm-hmm.
congruency.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a
I
very
thought,
long-winded explanation of the nervous system,
well,
but
you just reinforced for me why I shouldn't read the news because reading the news, it's like, here are all the things that can possibly
yeah,
go wrong and are going wrong in the world and in
mhm,
your life. Go.
yeah,
It's just,
exactly,
I
right. And
should
so
fear
unless you were
journal
doing an
instead.
exercise where you are proactively, like my intention is like, I'm going to read this and find the nuggets in which people are doing good. I'm going to
Yeah.
like, unless you're doing it as a challenge, all
Yeah.
this information is just reinforcing. Absolutely. Like, yep,
Right.
see,
Right.
still unsafe. No, thank
Yep.
you.
And that's
Yeah.
how we got doom scrolling. Like if
Yeah.
that's all you're not proactively
Yeah.
looking for the good, it is all doom.
It is. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no wonder we're all anxious messes,
For sure.
or at least I am. Um, Tell me about, I have just a couple more questions for you and then I'll let you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think women do exceptionally well in leadership?
Mm. I think women do exceptionally well with so many things. But I think the first part is like really attending to both the big picture, but the intricacy of the details involved to
Mm-hmm.
pull off the big picture. And I think, there's not many things where I separate gender ability. And so I do think there's also some cultural considerations that are put in
Mm-hmm.
here and, roles that we played. But in general, there also seems to be almost to like a brain mapping ability to like take
Mm-hmm.
an idea and dissect it into like, here's what a workflow would need to look like for this idea to actualize. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that part is something that's exceptionally well culturally from my standpoint. I think the being used to or expected to multitask gives us an advantage in this
Mm-hmm.
as well too. Like many things can happen at the same time and be going at the same time, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
like par for the course.
Mm-hmm.
So those pieces, I think women who are in these roles and are also in motherhood and trying to do the conscious parenting thing are also doing something that generations before us have not done, where they have either picked a career or they picked mothership or they picked what, I'm trying to hybrid and do both and not have models of what that looks like,
Mm-hmm.
and constantly feeling like I'm probably failing at one or both at some point in time or together at
Mm-hmm.
the same time. Um, but those are probably like the three most that stand out. And then I think like the whole movement towards like really understanding how much taking care of our health really matters. And I can't put this on the
Mhm.
table. And, everything
Mhm.
that's coming out with perimenopause and menopause now. And so now you've
Mhm.
got women that are already doing all this and now trying to add 10,000 steps and 64 ounces of water and 100 grams of protein and right. And you're just like, what? Okay. Like I'll make 2 hours happen to go to the gym. Like
Right.
fabulous. Let me find, it's like there is this constant adaptation that is
Yeah.
happening.
Mhm.
And so I don't know in that case if women are better at that, but just from my perspective, I think there's almost like okay, it needs to happen. And
Mhm.
some of the grit that's involved of like, I can do tough things.
Mhm.
I think we are very well equipped for.
Yeah, it's like there's this rally cry around like women in their 40s and perimenopausal age of like,
Yeah.
no one ever studied this or talked about this before.
Yeah.
Now we're all going to talk about it because it makes sense. And thank you for this
Yeah.
shred of information that we're now receiving about hormone
Yeah.
replacement therapy and protein and movement and all the things
Right.
that we could have had access
Yeah.
to, but
And
our
now we're all
generation.
frantically running around trying to figure out how to implement it into our lives and then telling everyone about it. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And then telling all the men to research this
Yeah.
and get
Right.
women in
Like this
STEM to
is what's
research this.
happening. Yeah. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that I love that point of like
Hmm.
being like a parent and a business owner or in business. It doesn't
Hmm.
have to be career or motherhood.
Yeah.
It's both. And we didn't see a lot of that until really the
No.
last, like
Yeah.
our generation and maybe a little bit older than us.
So there
But
isn't a
paving the
guide
way.
map, right?
Yeah,
And I think like
exactly.
that there's a lot of feeling of like, am I doing this right? Is this like what it should be? Or like,
Yeah.
I never saw anyone do this that looks like
Mm-hmm.
me. So
Mm-hmm.
that's,
Great.
like there's going to be those questions. The one other thing that I think women do incredibly well, and this is proven by science, that is like, and is a big reason why women need to occupy more of these roles is
Mm-hmm.
the the financial abundance that happens to communities where more women are in
Yes.
charge and how much communities benefit because when
Mm-hmm.
women rise up, they really take care of more than just themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Statistically speaking and across many, many cultures. And so there's almost like an imperativeness that more
Mm-hmm.
women need to be at these tables to ensure this is happening. Winnie agrees.
I know she does. On that note, um, no, I appreciate that you brought that up, and that's so true. I mean, female leaders
Mhm.
and females in prosperity and financial abundance do take care of their
Yeah,
communities and the people around them. And I think also having more women in those places teaches other women that we can do it. We get there
exactly.
in different
Yeah.
ways, but like we can create
Yeah.
this. There's room for us. It's not just the men.
Yeah. There
So
is. And there is more multitask. Like this is, sorry, now I'm thinking of all the differences, but another really big one is if motherhood is on the table, our male counterparts and our partners often do not need to consider how their career still fits into their life with
yeah.
parenthood. But
Hmm.
women are constantly having to figure that out.
Hmm.
And there's almost like oh, my career cannot look the same it looked before. I can't do
Yeah.
these all the same. There's like, this has to pivot in a way. And so I
Hmm.
think dealing with some of that just glass ceiling
Hmm.
ideology is like a huge piece that there's a huge differential. And just the fact that more women are doing it and figuring it out is
Hmm.
huge.
Hmm. Yeah. Such an important point.
Yeah. Thank you.
Um, what else do you want our listeners to know about you or any of your businesses,
Mhm.
Lisa?
I think in general, what I like as more just like a PSA for just entrepreneurs and women in general is this part of like, if you go down, the whole ship goes down. And so
Mm,
like reversing the ideology of like, first I get this taken care of and then I will get myself taken care of versus like, it doesn't need to be one or the other. You can do manageable things for you while you're also managing a behemoth of a business,
mhm,
and trying to figure it out. And, like the three exhales, like I don't need to go anywhere and I don't need to pay anyone for that to do, but I need to
mhm,
commit to doing that and having that in. And so this part of like not waiting to figure you out or take care of you or dial in your ecosystem until this
mhm,
other thing is more regulated because this other thing is going to grow and expand and not and dissipate and maybe become other things but there's only one of you, right? And
mhm,
so it's like that part of like consider flipping the weight
Mm,
ideology,
yeah.
and consider like how it would benefit these things if you were more dialed in.
Mm-hmm.
From a whole metaphysical perspective, there's the idea of like you cannot manifest or attract or participate in things that you are not at the energetic level of. So if
Mm-hmm.
I want this thing to thrive and flourish and flow and be effort and fun and light and all these things that we typically want from our businesses, but my energy is in like depletion and like
Mm-hmm.
near nervous breakdown,
Mm-hmm.
this is not going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so like start getting interested in practices that like level you up to what you're wanting to do and what you are doing
Mm-hmm.
now, and
Mm-hmm.
watch how then that helps like the symmetry between the two actually helps project you forward more.
Yeah. I love that. And I have to say, there is some like very deep unlearning for me that
Hmm.
I still have to do around that. And that was difficult for me
Absolutely.
in my business of putting myself first
So
because
hard.
that feels
Yeah.
selfish. And I don't
Hmm.
want people to think that I don't care about them or that their needs aren't as
Hmm.
important. Like all of that feels very difficult as someone being socialized as a female in our
Absolutely.
society, you
Yeah.
know? So I completely agree with you. And that's a really hard one that has been for
Yeah.
me. And I know for other women too,
And I
right?
think that's probably it. It's not about like this just magically happening. It's like us doing the work of unlearning this. And
Yeah.
then the next generation isn't going to have to do this the
Ugh.
same because we've
Yep.
done this work, you know?
Amen.
So yeah,
Preach,
you're here.
Lisa. All right. Where can people find you?
You can come hang out with me and find what we're doing at www.daydreammd.com or on Insta at day_dreammd. Um, both of those. Yeah, you'll see lots of postings, lots of things, lots of sharings of what's happening. That's probably the easiest way to find me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love your Instagram page. It's so colorful. And there's like actually very helpful tips on there.
Yeah, the goal was to not be just like another drone page of like,
Yeah.
Fear Island of like, all these things are wrong, act now,
Yeah.
but like, hi, like, here's how we can do this. I definitely, part of my mission of this year is to really increase my visual presence on the social
Mm,
situation. I know. So we'll help with some accountability here.
I love that. Well, you're here and
I
I
know.
can help you with that.
Perfect. Step one completed. I'm just going to keep taking exhales. We'll just keep figuring this out.
Perfect. All right, Lisa McJunkin, thank you so much.
Oh.
Daydream MD, go check her out and her team doing amazing things there. Thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge and expertise. You are truly a
Oh.
leader in your field. And I love hearing about your business and also how you're supporting other business owners and executives and leaders. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you, everyone. Keep breathing.